So we've got Lex Divine, not Ryan. I shouldn't call you Ryan, or should I call you Lex now?
I mean, this is sort of a kayfabe breaking podcast, right? So
yeah. I mean, we're sitting next to each other on a couch, and in kayfabe, the most interaction we've ever had is him reading bullying tweets to me in front of a crowd.
Okay.
So we're not together and are not like living together in kayfabe. So.
Right, in the wrestling world. That's okay. So I'm supposed to be Italian, so and I'll have spaghetti tonight, but that's about the only thing about me that's actually Italian. Don't tell Monte from Monte and the Pharaoh. He gets so upset at that. For some reason, Monte from Monte and the Pharaoh thinks that like my pretending that I was Italian is like the most offensive thing that's ever happened in the history of wrestling. And us to.
So we have questions from fans, and I'm here to answer them. And I may blather on and on and on, but I will get to a point eventually with your help.
Like in my introductions, I will get to a point eventually. And here is the first point I'm going to get to, a question. Or actually, it's more of a statement/question. And it says, please ask Dutch. Dutch, do you know who up in New York is talking about you?
Yes. There's two answers to that, really.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, you say, who? And they said, nobody.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast and the world's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monte The Pharaoh. Duke, you know why we're the #1 pro wrestling broadcast? I asked this to Ray before, but we don't usually ask a question. But since we're honored to have you in here, I'm going to ask you: do you know why we're the #1? You've been on everybody's show, right? Everybody loves you. You're a great storyteller, world famous pro wrestler. But do you know why we're #1?
Because you're hot and sexy?
That would be one, but no.
That's not the main reason.
That is not the main reason. The main reason is because Jim Beam says so. You know, all these other podcasts, right? They got like Blue Chew, not knocking Blue Chew. They could end up being a sponsor of ours. Do you have Blue Chew as a sponsor of yours? Is Blue Chew a sponsor of yours?
No.
All right. But anyway, Jim Beam says, right? Because when you sponsor Jim Beam, everybody knows who Jim Beam is.
Of course.
And that probably just makes us #1. So everybody could say they're #1, but the reality is, guess what?
You ain't got a real deal sponsor like Jim Beam.
That's it, brother.
That's it.
So, I don't know. You're not really familiar with the show. Hopefully after you enjoy yourself here. Hopefully you enjoy yourself here. I'm not sure. I got to fill in here, but I'll do my best to keep it afloat. My partner, Jimmy Pharaoh, he's in Florida. He's starting a new life there, so unfortunately they get to meet him in person, but maybe next time you're on, we'll get to introduce you properly. So Jimmy, we love you. I hope you watch. You think Jimmy's watching right now?
He might be. I haven't seen him comment or anything.
He doesn't have a YouTube page, dude. You don't know that by now?
Well, I know he doesn't.
I've known a guy for like over a year.
I know he doesn't have cable. I mean, so that makes sense.
All right, there you go. Today's news: man tied to suspected shooter in Tupac Shakur's 1996 killing arrested in Las Vegas. Las Vegas police have arrested a man in a deadly 1996 drive-by shooting of Tupac Shakur, a long-awaited break in the case that have frustrated investigators and fascinated the public ever since the hip-hop icon was gunned down in Las Vegas over 27 years ago.
Wow, 27 years.
Dwayne Keefe D. Davis was arrested early Friday morning, although the exact charges or charge were not immediately clear. According to two officials who first-hand knowledge of the arrest, they were not authorized to speak publicly ahead of the expected indictment. Davis has been long known by investigators and as himself admitted to interviews and in 2019 a tell-all memoir, Compton Street Legend, that he was in the Cadillac where the gunfire erupted during the September 1996 drive-by shooting. Shakur was 25 when he was gunned down. So, here lies the question, gentlemen. Now here you are thinking you're on a wrestling show and you're like, now we're going to talk about Tupac Shakur.
It's all good, though.
Cool.
Yeah.
So recently here on Long Island, I don't know if you're familiar, something called the Gilgo Beach murders. Mm-mm. Okay, so Gilgo Beach is a beach out east. Oh, no, sorry, probably west from here. Where they found numerous bodies of murdered women, buried in the beach. And most of them were escorts. That case went on for a very long time, was a cold case forever. About 7, maybe 8 months ago, they made a task force to find the murderer after 12 years. Now, 12 years have gone by. And amazingly, within like a 5-month stretch, they found the guy. And now he's been arraigned and he's going to go to court and probably go to jail for life. So now, recently, this is why I pulled this article, right? Tupac Shakur has been murdered for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. And now, out of nowhere, they find the murderer. What do you think of that? Do you think something's up here?
I definitely think something's up. It sounds sketchy to me, but I don't know. Maybe they knew for a long time, or maybe it was a hit job by people other than just, other gang members or whatever. It was something bigger than that, which is what I always thought, just because of his platform.
Were you a fan of Tupac Shakur?
I definitely enjoyed. I listened to and still do listen to all kinds of music, including rap. And yes, I did like Tupac Shakur's music, and it was a pretty crazy situation because it was so just out there in the public, the whole beef they had and everything that was going on with
with
Biggie and then Puffy Combs, whatever he was called then. But it was just strange that something like that happened out there in the middle of a busy, Las Vegas
Boulevard,
and nobody knew anything. It sounds kind of far-fetched to me. There has to be another reason why it took so long, and I don't know.
Just like you, I'm a fan of all types of music, and Tupac was definitely one of my favorite. In fact, I thought Tupac was one of the great geniuses music-wise. Don't know him as a human being. Obviously, the things that he was accused of or went to jail for probably weren't such great things, for sure. And so as a human being, I don't know where I stand on my judgment of him. But as a goat, maybe to use the word, as an innovator, incredible talent. But what's concerning to me is that, now we're closing cases that have been cold for 14 years, and we're closing them like this. And it just makes me wonder what could be happening in society. I mean, I'd hate for you to have a piece of pizza, and then all of a sudden you're the guy that,
the pepperoni pizza killer.
Right, exactly.
That's how they found that guy, right? They found pizza in a garbage or something?
So they found him as a suspect. They couldn't get hold of his DNA. So they followed him, and then they saw him throw a piece of pizza after he bit in it into a garbage. They got the pizza, and it matched the DNA of all the murdered women on Gilgo Beach. And now they're tying him to other murders that happened in Las Vegas. When they arrested him, he had a whole bunch of guns. again, it's not a felony to have, well, if you're allowed to carry, right, it's not a felony to have guns.
Right.
I'm not saying the man is innocent. I'm just saying that it's odd.
It is strange because, and also he had no run-ins recent enough with the law that they would have his DNA on file, because they've been collecting DNA for quite a while on people that are especially felons or whatever. But
well,
it's
I think
strange.
that's why they went and got the pizza, right? Because
Yeah.
they had the DNA of all these women that were murdered, and then needed his DNA to have this match per se.
Right, and I just oftentimes they'll take up cold cases like this and they'll pull the DNA evidence, and then all of a sudden it's a match for something they have in the system because that person kept offending
Right.
and got new charges doing something down the road that required them to get his DNA, and that's how they were able to make a match. But they had to follow this guy around and watch him eat pizza, and in order to get a sample of his DNA. That's pretty crazy.
It is crazy.
How did they? There's just so many questions. Like, how did they make him as a suspect? And
What are your thoughts on the world today in general? I mean, look, you were a very famous professional wrestler. Again, like we were saying to Ray, you have so many famous athletes in their field, and the three gentlemen, right? Anthony, Ray, and now yourself. You're the elite of the elite. Okay, you made the show. If you're in the WWE, you've made the show, and you're the elite of the elite. That's something all of you guys should be proud of. Different time back then. You're in today's world. Like, what bothers you as a human being? If anything bothers you, you may love it. I don't know.
Oh man, it's so much. You hear this often too. It's just everybody. It just seems like the world has gone crazy with being oversensitive, and that turns into so many other things. And then you have, like what they call cancel culture born out of that. And I think it's just all crap. And it's just, we have swung so far. Like we always talk about, if they had social media and cell phones with cameras when some of us were in the business, woo, brother, I'm going to tell you what, there's no telling what they could come up with on us, because we were crazy. I mean crazy. And it was just a different time. And now it's a situation where you can't even, in most situations, you can't express yourself or have an opinion that's different than the majority of people, apparently. Or I don't even think it's the majority. I just think it's the loud minority of people that are trying to cancel individuals because of what they think or believe. And it's just, I think there's a lot of problems in the world today because of that. The social justice warriors and all of that, and all the.
So are you trying to say because someone has this social media and they don't look? You come in here, someone goes, don't know what he does, don't know who he is, right? But he's something. For the professional wrestling fan, goes, that's a professional wrestler, right? I mean, I shook your hands. I think I got decently sized hands. I'm not a small guy, and it's like, I think your hand swallowed my hand, right? And I was like, holy shit! Now this dude is a wrestler. But do you think now today's society, since social media is so easy, like, look, let's be honest. We may disagree, but I'm sitting here 8 feet from you. I ain't gonna come challenge you on our disagreements, right? But now people are on the other phone, and you even said, right? Can you tell people out there you're I'll call it a podcast if that's what it is?
Yeah, I do Trash Cam Live. Yeah. On it's right now it's on Facebook and YouTube mainly, also Twitch, but it's on Duke the Dumpster Official. But yeah, we just get on there and I'll tell you what, I'm still of the belief or the way things were where I talk some shit and I just say things the way I want to say things.
So my point is, you have to have haters then, right, that come on
Oh,
and say.
From time to time, yeah, absolutely.
Now, do you believe those same haters, if they were sitting in this room right now and disagreed with whatever you were saying on your show, would dare say what they say to you on social media to your face?
No, never. Absolutely not. Not a chance at all. That's just the way it is. It's given people this comfortable platform to talk crap about what they don't like, and it's even, one or two steps further than that when you look at these situations where you see these little arguments happening between other people on social media. Like, I'm gonna tell you right now, I hate to admit it, but I've become addicted to TikTok. That's my go-to news source these days, TikTok. Right. But anyway, these people get on there and the Democrats and the Republicans on there go head-to-head and start yelling at each other in the comments. And if somebody says something just the wrong way, where it can be twisted and you can make a claim that this person's a racist or a something or a sexual deviant, or they go crazy digging up everything they can get on individuals. That's the difference. Right. So much instant accessibility.
What's the longest you've gotten caught in TikTok before looking up?
I'm going to have to plead the fifth on that. You're talking like...
I think the better question here, man, is this. You mentioned Facebook, Twitch, TikTok. Where does Pornhub rank in your website list?
What is that? What kind of website is that?
Lies! Liar!
Is that a
wow,
podcast?
You come in here and you lay lies on the shelf.
Everybody knows XNXX. Not Pornhub.
It's one of my favorite sites, I got to be honest with you. Ranks over TikTok. I'd like to thank the band that sings the theme song for Monte The Pharaoh and Jimmy Farrow, along with his partner Bark Riggs, make up the band Wisteria Hall. Wisteria Hall sings such great songs as In My Dreams, This Life, Not Far Behind, Here Comes the Rain. You can find their music on the Wisteria Hall YouTube page. And what do you do there, Bruce?
You download.
No.
Well,
oh my God,
download?
Jimmy! Oh my
you
God!
Download it.
You hit like and subscribe, and then once you're done liking and subscribing, you go to the Monte and the Pharaoh page, and what do? You
like and subscribe there.
Thank you. And then where do you go after that?
Well, Facebook, all the other. All right.
You had
What's
one
the
job.
man's podcast?
Yeah, come check us out on Saturdays at.
Are you on YouTube?
Yes.
And what do you do when you go to his podcast?
We're going to like and subscribe.
Thank you, Bruce.
And hit the bell so you can get notifications whenever it comes on.
Very good. See? Come sit over here. Let's put him over there. Holy shit.
You're fired.
Download Wisteria Hall's music on Spotify, Apple Music, Reverb Nation, and if you didn't know it, you're watching the world's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monte The Pharaoh. Catch us on the Monte The Pharaoh YouTube page, the Monte The Pharaoh Facebook Live page. Hear us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Anchor. Catch us on the Monte The Pharaoh Twitch TV page, and if you're lucky enough to live in New York, channel 115 every Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. and Saturday at 11:30 a.m. and channel 20 Tuesdays at 7 p.m. where over 150,000 viewers will see this icon on our couch in a reduced version. And if that's not enough to catch this show, you can go to the free network. I don't know if you ever heard of this network, but it's new. It's challenging Netflix. It's called Intuitive, IN2ITIVE Network. It's for free. You can watch movies, you watch documentaries, you have music videos, and you get to watch Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast.
The world's #1 wrestling broadcast.
We'll be back with this wrestling icon. And we just found out that he is a podcast master. And his #1 website is Pornhub, even though he lied about it. Duke the Dumpster Droese.
Not what we have listed over here?
Duke the Dumpster Droese. And you're supposed to say...
We'll be right back.
Thank you.
This.
Sir?
Ah.
Manscaped?
Uh-huh.
Have you tried the new equipment that's been sent?
I'm afraid because it says weed whacker. I'm scared.
Maven, Manscaped, what are you thinking about
Love
Manscaped,
it.
dude?
Love it.
What do you use it for?
Necessity. What don't I use it for? Put it this way. The only hair I have on my entire body is these eyebrows.
Yeah.
That you see. These caterpillars racing to the middle of my nose. That's it.
That is it.
That's all I have. And that's all I want.
That's the
So Manscaped is a must.
We were talking before the show. There's nothing worse than just hair.
Yeah.
Right? Hair on a woman, hair on a man, it's just bad.
Absolutely. And it's the one thing that the older I get, it starts growing more in unwanted areas.
Absolutely.
I hate it.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
Just going to go out there.
Oh, boy.
Go for it.
You're doing a deed.
Yes.
Again, I don't want you to have to admit this because we, as men, we try not to admit this. But if you're going to go do the deed on a woman, would you rather have her be hairless or a little hair, racing stripe, or
Racing stripe.
full retro bush?
Racing stripe.
Retro bush is out.
Yes, thank you.
Retro bush is out.
Yeah.
I don't mind a small, well manicured landing strip. Every now and then, if it's completely, and I'm talking like baby's ass bald, then I start. Where is that pedophilia line? I don't want to wander into that.
That's
thought
very
of it like
interesting.
that.
I never thought about that. You're a
Wow.
smart dude. Holy shit.
So if the landing strip is clean enough for the plane to go in smoothly, you're cool with that?
If the landing strip has, like I said, well manicured,
Yeah,
you can see both sides. It's not
Like blinking lights on both sides of that landing?
I don't want, I don't want the shrubbery going off into unwanted areas on that as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh, look
but-
what you found. Ooh.
I got to be all honest though. Hey, the older I get though, I don't think I can be as
I found it! I found
have
it!
you ever gone down there and like just like she slowly brings down the underwear? Then
What is
retro? Just,
Absolutely.
You're like, whoa!
Wow,
Yeah,
like,
I'm
like
46,
it
of
pops
course.
out?
Do you like walk out or what do you do?
No, I muster through. I muster up the courage to get
He's a
through.
trooper.
Yeah.
He's a trooper. Gotta give him an A.
Yeah, not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah,
There you go.
I hear you.
There you
Listen,
go.
I couldn't
Super
say.
Bush.
I couldn't say. Well, if you have the same beliefs as Maven, does Manscaped could help you?
Absolutely.
The weed whacker.
Absolutely.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I may have to, like, go in a room, close the door, and hang out with the weed whacker for a little while.
Yeah, I think you're a retro guy, aren't you?
I like 70s adult films, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
But
only
with that,
Ron
we're going to take a
Jeremy,
quick
Batman.
commercial break and we'll be
Anyway.
back with this wrestling icon, Maven.
We will see you in a drop kick second.
Drop kick. All right, welcome back to the world's #1 pro wrestler broadcast, Monte The Pharaoh, where we're joined by this pro wrestling icon, Duke the Dumpster Droese. So how does it feel after all these years? You're still doing virtuals. Fans are pouring in over the internet. Now you're going tomorrow to, I think, what, 80s Con or 80s
90s.
Icon?
90s Wrestling Con?
90s Wrestling Con, sorry.
That's all right.
How does that feel? You're going to have all these fans clamoring for your autograph, clamoring for your picture.
Clamoring. It feels great. I will say that. It's interesting that a lot of fans that were not necessarily there during those years are coming out now, and in sort of a nostalgic way, they're learning about those time periods in wrestling, and it's great to be a part of, and it's great to meet the new fans and all the fans really. But yeah, they're coming out in force. They want to learn about the history of wrestling more and more, it seems, these days. So that is really exciting. And yeah, I enjoy doing these conventions and stuff.
Have you ever, like, what was the most emotional time that you met a fan? Like, did you ever have a fan say, hey, look, you changed my life, or anything to that level?
Yes, there have been actually situations. Another podcast that I do on Friday is called the Recovery Podcast. It's to help individuals with a lot of the time with substance abuse issues and things like that. And from time to time, people will get in touch with me and they'll say, look, you pulled me out of that dark place, and I really appreciate it. Your positive outlook and your kind of motivation has got me going in the right direction, and I've been off of drugs for X amount of time, and that's always good to hear, because it's just such a miserable existence that it was really good to be able to affect people in that way. That is a great feeling. And also sometimes people come up and just talk about what they remember about my career back in those days, or somebody that I wrestled, and they'll pull out these little kind of points and little specifics about a situation, and I'll be amazed. I'll be, you remember that? It's like, yes, it's like these little things. So people really, when you're in the middle of it, oftentimes when you're in a position of being like an opening card or mid-card type wrestler, you don't necessarily feel like maybe the fans are really attaching to you as a talent or a superstar. You're like, well, yeah, I'm one of the guys, but I'm not one of the top guys that they, really love to come watch. But then here we are, almost 30 years later, and people will come up and talk to me about things that I did, during my wrestling career, and I'm just amazed sometimes. I'm stunned that they were really paying that close attention and they cared that much. That means a lot.
It's amazing, and it must be an incredible feeling.
Yeah.
Not to go to the negative, but I think we should talk about it because we come out the other side eventually. Obviously, you were an athlete, huge man, great shape. How does a guy with the talents of yourself fall down that rabbit hole of addiction?
Man, I'll tell you what, it's back in those days when we were wrestling in the early to mid 90s, it was difficult because, number one, it was long road trips, you were on the road for long periods of time, and you were killing yourself for very little money. There was not a lot of money in the business during the New Generation era, and you get injured, and the unspoken rule is, if you get hurt, don't tell nobody, because you're gonna get, if you're taken off the road, if you're not wrestling, you're not making money back then, and because there weren't a lot of guaranteed contracts really at all then, and you start to get wrapped up in, when you start to get a little bit more serious injuries, then you start to self-medicate, and you get any professional wrestler will tell you, we could all walk into a doctor's office tomorrow and let them x-ray our spines and our hips and our shoulders and get put on 10 different types of painkillers. There's no doubt, because we look like we've been in a car accident, 50 times over. So if you allow it to happen, you can get sucked into that lifestyle where you need something you feel like you need something, which is a narcotic, to feel good enough to do your job. And then it becomes you need something to go work out hard, like you need to work out in the gym, and then go and you need something to get in the ring and wrestle. And then it becomes you need something just to get out of bed, to be able to start the day, and then again to go to the gym, and again to go to the gym. And then it becomes you need something to help you go to sleep and start all over tomorrow. And it becomes this vicious cycle. And the only thing that kept me hanging on as long as I did while I was still in the business was the organization of it all. It's like, you have to be here to wrestle this, you got to get on this loop, you got to get a rental car, you got to show up at this building and do these promos, and all of that stuff kept me, it was regimented, and it kept me in a routine, so I was functioning, as they say. But then as soon as it was gone, because it got to the point where it got so out of hand that my behavior was becoming very erratic, and I was saying stupid things like to Vince and how unhappy I was, and I was frustrated. And so when they ended up sending me home, boy, you could the reins were dropped and the horses were free, and it was nonstop, and it just snowballed, and it became a massive problem. And it was 1996. I went home. 2003, I moved to Tennessee from Miami, Florida. I moved to Tennessee and went to rehab the first time. And that long I was in the hole. Yeah, from 96 to 2003, I was in this pit of hell of just every day. I once heard Scott Hall say this on that 30 for 30 special he did. He goes, I'm not going to say drugs aren't fun, because, in the beginning, drugs are fun. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of aspects of it and parts of it is fun, but then it gets to the point where you have to have it. You cannot go without it. You need it just to feel normal. And that's where the illness, the sickness comes in, and it's just a miserable existence, you know, and it was. And that's how I kind of went down that, as you said, the rabbit hole. I went, it just spiraled out of control. And I'm one of the lucky ones because a lot of my former coworkers are no longer with us because of those same problems.
Right.
So, yeah, I've been very fortunate in that respect. Unfortunately, I didn't fully get it. I made it like 7 years clean, and because of a foot injury, I relapsed and went so deep so fast that I got in trouble with the law. And when I got arrested, which was 2013, when I got arrested, that's when I realized something has to change, because I lost everything again. And you lose everything over and over and over, and the people you love start to move away from you, and you lose the things that you worked so hard for. And by 2013, I was a school teacher, and I was really good at it. And when I started taking painkillers because of a foot injury, it was over.
Lost it all.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but yeah, I caught charges and got felony convictions, and I just decided, you know, I'm going to go to rehab and get off of drugs, physically clean and sober, and then I'm going to do everything I could possibly do from that point forward to stay clean and sober and learn everything about this so I can function and maintain every day and work on it. Because the first time around when I got clean, I was clean physically, and I said, okay, I'm good now. I'm going to go work on getting a new career, which is what I did. And I didn't think about addiction issues ever again. That's a mistake. See, any addict in recovery will tell you we have to maintain on a daily basis somehow. And it doesn't have to be a battle. It doesn't have to be difficult, but you do have to maintain it. And a big part of what I do now is I work with other people who are going through the same situation. And with the court systems where I live, I work for what's called a drug court or a recovery court and a mental health court. And we just try to offer something other than just locking people up. Help, you know? And that's become my passion in life. I never thought I'd have another passion in life after wrestling, but I found one because, you know, the whole process of getting clean and sober it showed me that happiness is possible in life. You don't have to stay stuck. You know, there's always hope. You just have to open your mouth and ask for help. And that's what I try to teach people every day, man. It's just become my life.
Great message, man. God bless.
Thank you.
Hero. Let me ask you, some of the older wrestling fans, or the wrestling experts we'll call them, would say this is why Vince McMahon is evil, right? Because he doesn't take care of the people who have made him a billionaire. Does Vince McMahon owe wrestlers or wrestlers like yourself who find themselves in trouble or find themselves in a medical condition that they may not be able to afford, right? Because maybe something went wrong. Does he owe them their recovery? Does he owe them, lifetime life insurance? What are your feelings on that?
That is a good question, and it's a complex question. But I will tell you, I've learned through the process of learning about myself over the years, I've learned a lot about the way that I felt about Vince McMahon and the WWF, now WWE, over the years. Because at one time I was and there are a lot of wrestlers who end up being very angry and bitter. And I was one of those people that was very bitter and angry about not just Vince, because he lied to me about this and that, and it never happened, and blah, blah. You hear that story over and over again from people. And I was bitter and angry, and I wanted to blame him and blame anybody else, like Shawn Michaels and the Clique, or whoever you wanted to put blame on. And the reality is, years and years later, when I had to finally, when I was getting into recovery, and I had to take a hard look at myself, I realized a lot of that shit I brought on myself. and I had to take ownership of my part in it. So I can't blame Vince McMahon for the things that happened to me in wrestling. I made a lot of mistakes, and I own those, and I take responsibility for that. He was and is a wrestling promoter. And that's what promoters do. They come up with plans for different situations and different wrestlers and different talent. And some of those things they go through with, and some of them they don't, because they change plans. It happens.
Right.
And I had to realize that. And the one thing, though, that I used to always think was, how can they not, it's not their responsibility that people became drug addicts either. It's not. But I used to kind of think it would be a good idea if they kind of helped some former workers that did break their backs for the business. And then they came out, I don't remember what year the first year was, but, they sent out a certified letter. And I went and picked it up and read it. It was anybody who's ever been under contract to the World Wrestling Entertainment or World Wrestling Federation, they would send and pay for rehab. And they started that program as part of their wellness program. And I have to respect that. Now, I had too much pride to ask them to pay for my rehab.
Yeah.
And actually, I still had insurance at the time because I was a school teacher. I had state insurance and all kinds of stuff until I got my license revoked when I, caught the charges and everything. But I appreciate the fact that they made that effort. That's a big deal.
Sure it is.
If they offer to send guys to rehab, that means they actually do care. And I know maybe people say, hey, he's just covering his ass. Maybe he is, but still, offering rehab is a huge deal to somebody who might not have access to it or doesn't even understand what it is because they've been so deep in that hell of addiction. Giving somebody, a lot of times you give somebody that opportunity and they learn these things about themselves and they make the changes. So I think that's a huge gift from them, So in that respect, I have to say, they have done some things to try and help some of the boys.
Because I appreciate you saying that, because it's like, for the average Joe like myself or Bruce, right? A lot of companies don't offer that, right? It's like you're on your own. And I fail to understand, because someone becomes a billionaire because of his vision and he convinces someone to do something, or this person wants to do it, and he makes a lot of money off of it, that he now is fiscally responsible for those people. I mean, the real world just doesn't act like that, right? It just, no one's fiscally responsible for you, right?
No, I have to take ownership of all the things I did. I knew what I was getting into. It was like the thing with the concussion deal. I knew what I was getting into, and I had a lot of concussions before I even went to the WWF. And somebody approached me. It's funny because it was after I got busted, and I was still on probation. And one of the lawyers from that lawsuit, for the concussion lawsuit, tried to contact me through my probation officer. I was like, are you kidding me? These people are looking for me through the probation? You got to be kidding me. And I never called them because it was the same attitude. I was like, I knew what I was getting into, and I can't blame Vince or the company for any concussions I had or anything else. I mean, my body is ravaged with injuries. I lost a foot, for God's sakes.
Right.
But that was the chance I took. I thought I was invincible at one time. I flew all over the place and landed hard on concrete and, all sorts of other situations many times. But, again, I got to take ownership of my part in that. I was bouncing around like an idiot and jumping around. I knew what I was getting into.
All right, I'm going to ask you this, and then Bruce, I'm going to let you take over, because we're getting Bruce ready.
Good.
Get this opportunity. Feel free to rip them apart. How do you feel about GoFundMe pages?
GoFundMe pages?
Yeah.
I think there is a time and a place for GoFundMe pages. However, I think like most other things in today's society, they have been abused and misused and overrun with a lot of people that maybe don't need to have GoFundMe pages. So
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to throw something at you, and obviously I want your honest opinion. I'm sorry. When I see a guy like Jake the Snake Roberts, for example, who's made millions of dollars through his career, and he spent it all, right?
Right.
And now he's going to go have shoulder surgery, so he puts out a GoFundMe pages, and he expects these wrestling fans, and it's a large network of people. You know, you think if every wrestling fan gave $1 to Jake the Snake Roberts, the guy's going to be a millionaire again, right? I've got a problem with that. I just don't agree with it. And I'm asking you, I'm going to let you continue. I'm sorry I interrupted you. What are your thoughts about something like that example?
One of the very difficult lessons I had to learn about myself as I was going through recovery is there's going to be a lot of shit that goes on in the world around me that I don't agree with. But I've learned that, you know, I've just got to do my deal in life and stop worrying. I can't worry because, you know, I didn't, my pride wouldn't even let me use the WWE's money to go to rehab. I could never set up a GoFundMe. I don't see myself ever being able to do that. So when other people do it, it makes me kind of cringe a little bit. And yeah, I don't, but you know, it's, people are going to do it. I don't know. For me, it's, you know, I don't know if it's shame or what you call it. I have or don't have or whatever, but I don't know. I don't believe it's something I would ever do. So, and I don't. There's a lot. Most of the things I've ever seen on GoFundMe, I wouldn't give money to.
By the way, your subscriber count on YouTube just dropped by 5,000.
Yeah.
Bam. Go ahead, Bruce. It's all yours, big guy.
All right. Well, let's take a step back here. So, when did you actually decide to become a pro wrestler?
Well.
Now you're going to get into the boring shit there, bud.
I kind of knew when I was a kid. I was watching Championship Wrestling from Florida at the time, and I just watching that every Wednesday. I would go. They did the live show loop through Florida, and I would go to the Miami Beach Convention Center, and I would stand by the locker room and watch the wrestlers go out and wrestle, and all that. I was such a fan. And
who were your big idols back then?
Ric Flair, and I back like when I was younger. You know, Blackjack Mulligan when he was in the Championship Wrestling from Florida. I remember the feud he had with Kevin Sullivan when Kevin Sullivan started the I don't remember what he called it, something. He was the Prince of Darkness, and that's when Luna first broke into the business. There, shaved half her head. And Bob Roop shaved half of his head, and my buddy Abu Dean was part of it, and it was that affected me. I was like, man, this is so cool. And the purple haze.
It was so dark, but it seemed real.
It was great. Yeah, even though I kind of knew wrestling wasn't necessarily all real in terms of it was predetermined kind of. I still was. I was into what they were doing.
Yeah, I watched that video of Luna shaving her head. It just seemed surreal. It just almost cultish.
Yeah, and. But anybody he was in an issue with, anything Dusty was doing in those days, and then of course Lex Luger came along when he first broke in, and Hiro Matsuda was training him, and he did a deal where he was together kind of with Rick Rude. Rick Rude came through Florida for a little while, and I just bought all of it, man. I loved it, and I kept being a fan, and I always wanted to try wrestling moves out in the neighborhood and stuff. And then by the time I got to high school. At some point when I was in high school, that was the same time WrestleMania 1 started, and it happened. And they didn't have pay-per-view then. They had closed-circuit TV.
Closed circuit,
you go watch it at an arena. And I went to the Miami Beach Convention Center to watch it on a big screen with my dad. And I watched, in the weeks building up to that, everything with the Mr. T and the Hulk Hogan match, the tag match with Piper and Orndorff, and everything that was involved, Cyndi Lauper, just all of it, the way it was presented, I realized this is something different. This is way different, and it's really cool. It was like it was like Hollywood and wrestling combined. And during that show, during watching WrestleMania 1 on that big screen, I stood up and I looked at my dad. I go, I want to be a professional wrestler. And I was already an athlete in high school, football and wrestling and stuff like that. And that's when I started kind of devising the plan. And we actually, at some point we had, as the wrestling team at the high school, as a fundraiser, we had the Florida Championship Wrestling people come in and do matches in our gym. It was like Dusty Rhodes and Barry Windham and Lex Luger and all these guys. And my dad went in the locker room and asked around to where there was a school. And he found out there was a place really close by in a warehouse with a ring. And this guy, Bobby, the Jamaican jammer, Bobby Wales, who used to tag with the Haitian sensation, Tyree Pride. And Bobby Wales was training people. He trained me, and he trained Norman Smiley, and he trained a bunch of other people that were just kind of coming through. But we just all showed up every day and jumped in the ring and started. There was no real organization to it, but there was a lot of good athletes. But that's where I started out, and it didn't take too long for me to do my first match and stuff. So,
well, from there, how did you end up coming into the WWF?
Well, I was going to college at the University of Miami, and I was wrestling on the side, doing some wrestling shows and stuff. And I had developed this character down there, the Garbage Man Rocco Gibraltar.
Love it.
And because I knew, I was thinking ahead, and I said, if I ever want to get in the WWF and have a chance to get in there, what are they looking for? And I knew at that time they were looking for these cartoonish characters, and I just thought about it, and I knew it would be perfect. It's like you kind of the blue collar, hard working man, common man kind of deal. And Vince would probably eat that up. So I put that together, and I started doing as much tape on it, taping all my matches. And I put together, right as I was graduating college, I put together a promotional package with a highlight reel, with a music video highlight reel, and an entire match, and a promo on the beginning of it. And I got some 8x10 black and white pictures done of Rocco Gibraltar with a garbage can bent over my head, which I still have one of those somewhere, by the way.
Showing it up.
And a resume. And it's funny. I made a bunch of copies, like 30, and I was going to drive around the country and pass them out to promoters at different places, like Memphis or Texas, I think, was still running at the time, and some other places. And one day I was reading the newspaper in Florida, and it said, they were talking, Hulk Hogan was just jumping to WCW as a babyface Hogan, right? The skinny Hogan.
Mm-hmm. The skinny Hogan.
And it was skinny Hogan. The skinny Hogan.
I remember I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh man, Hulk's
skinny Hogan. I always said, yeah, he was off the gear for a while. But it was during right when the steroid scandal was starting to fire up too, and the feds were taking Vince to court and all that, which he ended up beating, of course. But during that whole thing, it was big news that Hogan was jumping, and they had a convention. Of all places, they had it at the Miami Beach Convention Center, the NatP convention, where you have like TV executives and stuff, I think selling shows basically. And WWF and WCW both had like their own little setups, right? And so the newspaper article was interviewing Hulk Hogan about the steroid scandal and stuff. And he had some comments about it and whatever and this, that, And then they said Vince McMahon, who was also in attendance, had no comment. And at that moment, I realized Vince McMahon is here in Miami, in my backyard. I've got to get in there somehow. So I ended up having a friend that was an executive at a local Channel 2 in Miami, the PBS station. He was an executive, so he had credentials to go to the NatP convention. I got his credentials and wore a suit, and I walked right in the front door and walked right up to Vince McMahon at his booth, and didn't give myself time to chicken out of it. And I pitched him. I said, I'm Mike Droese, and I'm a professional wrestler. I've been wrestling here around Miami and Florida for the last, on and off for the last 9 years. And I just graduated from college, and I would like to come work for the World Wrestling Federation. And Vince just, he looked at me. He was like, whoa. And he said, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. He goes, you graduated college? I said, yes, sir. He goes, then why do you want to do this? I said, well, Mr. McMahon, you know, in life, I think a lot of people have two possible routes. They go to school and prepare for life in that way, and eventually maybe work a 9-to-5 job, and they do their best and do the things that you have to do in life to be successful. And then there's your dream. And I said, wrestling in the World Wrestling Federation is my dream, and it always has been, and I would like to go after that first before I try anything else. And he just, you know, he loved that answer. And I said, at your earliest convenience, if you could possibly look at this, I would really appreciate it. All my information is on there. You can get in touch with me. And he goes, I'll absolutely do that.
Now, did you believe him at the point, like, he's going to throw this in the trash?
No, I didn't. I think that, you know, what's interesting is probably 2 weeks before that, they did a house show at the James L. Knight Center, and the agent was George Animal Steel. Mm-hmm. And I went in and crashed that, and walked in there with a package and gave it to him. He goes, I'll make sure this gets to the right people, kid. I'll do it, kid. And I don't think that ever got anywhere, because interestingly, nothing ever came of it. But then when I walked up to Vince and handed it to him 1 week later, J.J. Dillon called.
Holy cow.
And they said, we want to bring you up for a tryout. And as soon as I walked in the door at the TV taping, one of the first guys to come walking up was George Animal Steel. Hey, I told him all about you. Yeah, sure you did. Sure you did. But yeah, I handed it to Vince, and you know, Vince is a shrewd but smart businessman. If nothing else, well, he's a lot of other things too, and he's a hell of a promoter. He's probably one of the greatest promoter, arguably, of all time. But if he sees a potential opportunity, you know, he had to at least take a look at it, right? So the interesting thing about it is, I think more than just Vince, because Shane McMahon came up to me at the tryout match up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and he walked up. I didn't even know who he was, but he shook. Of course, I was being nice to everybody because I was just happy to be there. He shook his hand and he goes, "Hey, who did your tape?" And I looked at him and I started laughing. I said, "Me and my brother with 2 VCRs and an 8-track recorder." Wow. I had like 50 VHS tapes, and I went through each and every one meticulously, and I scripted it with counter numbers of moves I wanted to use, and I created a script of a highlight video, and I put that together, and it just turned out to be really cool with power slams and press slams and boom, all this stuff I was doing. And then somehow me and my brother decided to put Cool Mo D's I Go to Work over it. And it turned out so cool by dumb luck. It was so cool. But yeah, it was 2 VCRs. And I just kind of took each one by one. I took the clips and put them onto one master tape. And we put it together. And then we stuck a match on the end of it and a promo on the beginning of it. And that was it.
And here you're there. I want to ask you this first as the fan, because you mentioned it when you were discussing, WrestleMania 1. Does Cyndi Lauper deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, and is she the one that changed the face of pro wrestling?
Yes and no. Yes, she deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. No, she didn't change the face of pro wrestling necessarily, but she was part of it. And for that, she deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. They have a celebrity wing, as they call it, in a Hall of Fame that doesn't physically exist, but a celebrity wing. I think they should have a gimmick wing, damn it.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what I think.
I agree. Why does that have to be a gimmick ring? I think... All right. Now, listening to you talk about Vince, and I don't want to make this all about Vince, but I see this respect, but disrespect, like you don't like him.
Well, I mean, I couldn't work for him.
Well, let me ask you this: when Vince has had some really strange couple of years, right? Became a really super billionaire, sold his company, but also was sued for sexual harassment. When you heard the sexual harassment suit against Vince McMahon, what were your thoughts? Were you shocked, or were you like, I knew that was coming?
I would say I was not completely surprised. You know, he's a very powerful man, powerful individual. But more important, though, than that is, in situations like that, I've learned, one of the big things I've learned about myself is when I see somebody in a situation like that, in some way, it humbles me, because at one point I was in a very low, dark place, and it wouldn't take much for me to be right back there. Mm. And so when I see people going through situations like that, I've learned that the proper response is to not enjoy or revel in the fact that they're suffering, because Lord knows I suffered a lot, and I hope nobody would have enjoyed that. And but it does me no good, because honestly, if you take some delight in somebody else's misfortune, that is a form of resentment. You're showing resentment towards that person. And if you hold resentment inside of you and in your heart about somebody or some situation, it just makes you sick internally. It makes you mentally sick sometimes. And I that was a big lesson I had to learn.
I mean that's a great and you know, that's a very hard role to play, right? I mean, God, holding anger, and it's, you know, I have trouble with it every day.
Sure.
Speaking of that, right? And again, I don't know your relationship with them, but you were at the time when the Clique was evolving within pro wrestling. How did the Clique treat you?
I always got along with them. I got along with everybody. But at the same time, I did harbor, at that time, some bitterness towards them, because they were getting all the opportunities. They had all the power. They had Vince's ear. And my response back then was to be bitter and angry. And I'm sure I even complained about it a bit in front of some other people maybe, or other wrestlers, and which probably wasn't good for me as well. But I never had problems personally with them. I used to go out to the bars and party with them. Like, Lord knows, I carried Sean out of a few bars, and me and Scott Hall partied many times till the sunlight came up. And you know, but they, you know, they would go out and party with me, but they wouldn't necessarily do business with me. They wouldn't wrestle me.
Were you around the time when Michaels got beat up by those Marines in the bar? So we had Shane Douglas in a while ago, and he tells a story like he just didn't even believe it. He said it was a bunch of bullshit. What do you know about that situation? What did you hear within the locker room?
Well, you know, depending on who it was, you got a different story. Like the people that were really bitter and hated the Clique, they would come up with all kinds of stories that, you know, they thought happened. I actually sat down right after it happened. I was sitting at a table, I think it was like we were eating before the show at catering, and it was me and Kevin Nash and Sean, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's who it was. And we were sitting there, and Sean was kind of just telling, you know, he was talking to Kevin about it, but also me. I was sitting there, and I remember looking at him, because there was a few times I got him out of situations like that in bars where he would be fucking with people and pissing them off.
Right.
And I remember telling him, I go, well, if I was on that loop with you, it wouldn't have happened. Now, I don't know if that's the case or not, but they were telling us.
I tend to agree with you, by the way. I would think it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal was with the kid and Davey Boy, who were supposedly there when it happened, or what happened with that. I don't know, but I know the story is they kept saying it was like 9 guys or 6 guys or something, and but I could very well see it happening, because I saw him try to pick a fight with like 6 guys one time in a bar when I was there, and I kind of dragged us all out of there as quick as I could, but I don't know the real story, maybe necessarily. I think it's maybe somewhere in the middle of what happened, really, or maybe it wasn't 9 guys. Some people say it was only a couple of guys. I don't know.
If you ask Shane Douglas, he said it was like 1 guy, and he was like 4'8".
But Shane doesn't like Sean either because the clique really did him dirty.
Do you think they did him dirty?
Yeah. Yeah.
How come?
Because he was a great talent and a great wrestler, and he could have done great things at that company. It's just he was dead in the water before he even got started because he rubbed somebody the wrong way, like one of the Click Boys or something.
I mean, when we had Scott Hall in, Scott wasn't very complimentary of him. He said he heard all these great things about him, but he was small and he was slow and he really couldn't wrestle.
History, though. You know, it's when the guy came in, certain people were all excited about working with him because he is a talent. He was great, a great wrestler, and still is, I'm sure. But things went the way they did, and everybody creates their narrative later on as to why it happened. And, a lot of times people will say things that justify their position. So, but I believe the truth is probably somewhere in the middle there.
Right, yeah.
But I do know Shane came in, and there was a lot of potential opportunities for him to work with a lot of the top guys. And I don't know, something happened, and he rubbed somebody the wrong way. Like he didn't jump into their reindeer games or something right away, and maybe they just were turned off to him, and from that point you're done. Back then you'd be done because they would, I've even heard them say they would tell Vince to starve people, which means you're hardly ever booked, you're not getting paid, and that happened. I saw that. Hell, I think it even happened with me, which I don't know why, because I wasn't a threat to any of them. I was nowhere near them on the card. But I do know, when Shane Douglas came in, everybody knew he was a good worker, great worker.
So that goes back to my original question then, right? It's like, you forgive, you don't harbor that pain, but think about it. You're a huge guy, right? You had a good-looking guy, right? Probably they could have done maybe a better gimmick with you, but I thought the gimmick was fine. You also now have relationship. You just said you've dragged them out of bars. You've ate at catering with them. And then you hear that they're stomping you out. How do you forgive that? A potential $1 million career destroyed by 4 guys.
Just because things went a certain way and I think maybe something happened doesn't mean it necessarily did happen. But even if it did, one big thing that I realized as I look back on the years that I was there, and the things that happened to me and the things I went through, again, a lot of it was of my own doing. And I realize now that no matter what's going on or how bad things can seem, there are certain things you can do to get yourself over, especially when they put you on live TV.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what Rocky Maivia did. And he had a lot of heat with people like the Click and stuff early on. But he turned it around because he persevered, because he got himself over. Steve Austin, he was just drolling along in mid-card status in the beginning. And then he really started to kind of break out and show his personality, and he got himself over. Hindsight being 2020, I wish I had understood that part of the business. I didn't. I took everything personally, and I thought somebody else should be pushing me. I thought the office needs to be pushing me. You hear that a lot with people that are bitter. But again, if they weren't pushing me, I should have pushed myself.
Right.
I realized that much later on. It took a long time. But yeah, I was bitter and full of regret for a long time. But things happened the way they did, because I've told from time to time I will speak to Steve Austin. Oops, I just dropped a name. But I said, he asked me if I had any regrets, and I told him, I said, yeah, there are certain regrets, but I was clueless when I was there. I admit that. And I'm fine with that. I was clueless. I once heard Bruce Pritchard say Duke was too nice for the wrestling business. I guess I was. Maybe I was. I wanted to be friends with everybody. And Sean used to kind of laugh at that. He'd say, you can either make friends in this business or you can make money.
Right.
But not both. Well, I wanted to be friends with everybody and have fun while we were all doing this thing.
Right.
That's kind of not how it worked. completely. So it took me a long time to realize those things.
Well, I got to get you out of here.
Okay.
I mean, I could literally talk this interview for 5 hours. I mean, unbelievable. We're going to hit you with the Pharaoh's final question.
Uh-oh.
Pharaoh's not here. The last 2 interviews, Bruce's.
Believe me, I noticed Pharaoh's not here, man.
Right, I understand. Bruce has jacked this up a million times. Eric, you want to come in and promote your stuff real quick?
Sure.
And then we'll get to Pharaoh's
ESS, ladies
final
and
question.
gentlemen.
Where do you want me to sit?
Like right next to
Is there a mic?
Mike?
Is there a mic ready?
It'll pick you up,
Look
right?
at
He'll be
big
good.
time. Look at big time here. Is there
Go
a
ahead.
mic?
Go, run.
Oh, run.
Run. Did you ever hear Eric Sims run?
Do you,
Run, motherfucker.
do you mind if I dance with your date?
God damn it, motherfucker.
Dang, dude.
Why you got curse, bro?
Yeah.
All right, Eric.
I'm
Have at it.
This is
All right, it's no BS. It's your cult hero. It's ESS. Of course, we're here with Duke the Dumpster Droese, and you're going to see him along with TL Hopper, Dirty White Boy, and my boy Doink the Clown. You know, you got the Garbage Man, the Plumber, and the Clown. Oh my! 90s Wrestling Con tomorrow, Rockaway Mall at Rockaway, New Jersey, and be there. Come on. It's no BS. It's your cult hero. It's ESS.
Real quick before the final question, one more question from me, Mike, to you is being around Vince, right, and your discussion, you mentioned that you've seen Shane and stuff like that. How was Shane and Vince's relationship that you could see?
Shane McMahon?
Yeah.
It was very interesting, actually, because when I first met Shane, as I said before, I didn't know who he was. I didn't realize he was a McMahon because I didn't know who was in the McMahon family.
Right.
And he used to refer to Vince as Vince. He didn't call him Dad.
Right.
He called him Vince. And when I realized he was his son, like weeks later, like when I went in to do my vignettes, he produced my vignettes in the beginning. It was during that process I realized, oh my God, this is Vince's son. I'm glad I didn't say anything stupid. But he was still calling him Vince. But it was just interesting that he was kind of learning each part of the company. And at that point when I came in, he was in the studio, but he was like an employee. He wanted to be an employee because he wanted to learn everything about each aspect of the company. So yeah, that's how I met him. But
the reason I bring it up is when Maven was in here, Maven said that Triple H was the son that Vince always wanted. Would you agree with that comment?
Maybe. I mean, there were definitely later on after I was gone, it seemed like there was a rift between Shane and Vince, where Shane even left and went and did other things. So that should tell you something, I guess. But
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, Pharaoh's final question. Let's hope he.
Can I plug one other thing?
Sure, you can.
The Gimmicks of the 90s tour rolls on not only Saturday, but Sunday. So if you can't make 90s Wrestling Con, we're going to beat the wrestling universe in Queens, New York. Duke the Dumpster Droese, TL Hopper, Dirty White Boy, Doink the Clown, Miss Jacqueline, and who else knows who's going to show up? It's 11 to 2 at the Wrestling Universe in Queens, New York. And if you know about the Wrestling Universe, you'll know where to go to come see these stars. If you can't make it, the 90s Wrestling Con tomorrow.
Eric, is it true that I heard that you're going to sell signed toilet plungers at this event?
They're in the car.
You damn right.
They are in the car.
So-
TL Hopper will sign the plungers.
Listen, fine, I get it. But here's what I
I'm upset I couldn't find garbage cans for the garbage man to sign.
Ace Hardware. What are you talking about?
I brought this. I brought this up to Ray, and here's
There's a
my
garbage
question.
can right next to you.
People collect stuff, right? Baseballs, right? Signed baseballs, signed magazine, whatever. With all due respect, who's going to put a plunger in their man cave sign? Like, who's going to do that?
A true wrestling fan. A true wrestling fan is going to do that. Until their toilet's plugged.
I
only want 6 of them, so
Mike,
we're going to take a chance
you
with 6
think
of them.
it's a good idea?
Well, let me just say this. You know what my last match was in the WWE?
TL Hopper.
TL Hopper, and you know how it ended?
He plunged you.
Plunged you.
Where?
In the face.
In the face. Yes. So I've got a special relationship with the plungers. Yeah, me and the plungers.
You're okay with it?
Yeah.
Special relationship with the plumber and the plunger.
I've got a whole shrine to TL Hopper at my house. He doesn't know this though. I hope he doesn't hear me. But
Here he comes.
I before I came on this trip, I was at home just rocking back and forth going, I get to see TL Hopper. And then he shoved a plunger in my face. I can't wait to see him. He's not going to be ready for me.
That's great. All right. Pharaoh's final question. Let's see if you could get 1 out of 3 here.
All right. So you name dropped a little bit before with Steve Austin. Now, I read somewhere that back when he was coming into the WWF as the ringmaster, that you had a little bit of an issue doing a job for him?
I refused to do a job for Stone Cold Steve Austin, arguably the greatest professional wrestler of our time. Yes. But no, yes, he was. Here's the deal. I told you I was very frustrated. When you started the WWF back in those days, you signed for an initial 2-year deal. No guarantees. Really, it was just a chance to work there. And if you made it through those 2 years, you could re-sign for 1 year. Well, right as my 2 years was coming up, they weren't really using me much. I wasn't getting booked. They were killing me on TV. And I was pissed. And my contract, the initial contract, was about up. And I came into TV one day, and at that point I wasn't even bringing my bag in the building anymore because I was never on TV. And out of the blue, they said, Duke, you need to go get dressed. You're going to wrestle the new guy. And the new guy at that point was this guy, Steve Austin, who I knew who Steve Austin was. And they were calling him the ringmaster. And this was one of his if not his very first match. And I just remember, like, feeling this, in the pit of my stomach, this sickness of, these sons of bitches have not had me wrestling on TV for the last however many months, and now they want to just pull me back in and kick my ass once again. I was like, I'm sick of this. And then, of course, I was kind of riding with Bret Hart at the time, and I was sitting next to him in the locker room, and he just looked at me and he goes, I'd refuse to do it. And I went, I can do that? He goes, I would. So I went and talked to Bruce Pritchard, and I said, look, I don't know what you guys want me to do, but you guys are killing me, so I don't know if I think maybe I need to leave or something. And he goes, wait, don't do anything. Let me go get Vince. And he's like, I had this feeling like, oh, my God, they want me. He doesn't want me to leave, right? No. So Vince talked to me. Vince talked to me the next day. At length, we spoke. And I told him what I really wanted to do, and I wanted to turn heel and do all these things. And he goes, we're going to do it. Absolutely, pal. You got it. Very good.
Good invitation.
And I was excited and signed the 1-year rollover. Still no guarantee, just a bullshit chance again. Signed it, and literally the ink wasn't even dry, and they were jobbing me out to people on TV again.
Oh, man.
They got me to re-sign, because what little bit of money they did put into me, they wanted to have a return on it by, letting me put people over or whatever. But yeah, as soon as I signed that, and I remember it was, I was really just pissed. And I remember going home and calling my mom, and I told her what happened, and she goes, she was just disgusted. She goes, oh, Michael, don't ever believe a word any of them say ever again. Mm. And I held on to that for a long time. I was like, I can't trust any of these people. And it just, like I said, spiraled out of control and got a lot worse. But yeah, and we still laugh about that to this day. I always rib him. I go, I wouldn't do a job for you when you first came in. One of my stellar, one of the stellar moves in my illustrious career is not putting over the greatest pro wrestler, arguably, of all time.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us. Incredible interview. Once again, you want to promote the man's...
Yeah, we've got to make sure you check out Trash Cam Live. Like, subscribe, hit that bell. Make sure you follow them.
And come visit them Saturday for autographs and pictures and load up Eric Sims' purse with lots of money.
Feed me money.
Want to thank you again, sir. Quite the gentleman, quite the story, quite the man.
Thank you.
This has been Mike Monte. This is Bruce filling in for Daniela, who will be back on Thursday. We'll see you on Thursday with the world's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monte and the Pharaoh.